Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Grand Page. I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost. Please excuse my nose or any sort of nasaliness. The pollen is out in droves lately. Spring has started, but I didn't want to stop the video making because I'm onto some really interesting stories. If I'm not mistaken, I think last weekend I put out a review for Jawbreakers Lost Souls. It's an independent comic book written by Richard C. Meyer. Some of y'all might know him as your boy Zach from Comics Matter. And I'm continuing my reread of these stories in preparation for his fifth Jawbreakers book, Jawbreakers Contingency. And we are continuing the reviews with Jawbreakers God King. I just to sort of recap Lost Souls. It was a fun read. It really made me think about how to read comic books because of the way it was structured and formatting. Really, it's improved my enjoyment of reading comics as a whole. And it was a really fun read. Admittedly, there was some bits that were a bit confusing. You kind of had to fill in the parts on your own, so to speak. But definitely that story with the giant gorilla certainly had a satisfying conclusion, had good catharsis, lots of fun moments, good action, comic book action, all that stuff. And also that book technically had like 3 books in it. So I had Lost Souls and then it had 2 other Jawbreakers stories in it. And one of those stories actually led up to the events in this book, God King. And I would say that the fact that those events leading up to God King aren't actually in the God King book proper might be my first critique of this particular book. That leaves the Lost Souls book on a bit of a cliffhanger. And it's not necessarily like a bad thing per se, but it does make you wonder, there it is. The events that carry on from the first book into the God King book don't blend seamlessly. I feel like one of those books from the Lost Souls book should have really been in the God King book here proper. So that way there'd be a little bit more continuity. And just like the Lost Souls book, this one also has a lot of fun in it. It goes in interesting places. Characters that you thought were allies aren't necessarily bad guys, but they have their own sort of agendas and whatnot. And it makes for some interesting dynamics, some interesting choices, and some interesting events. Again, there are some things with the story that you kind of have to piece together yourself, and you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit to follow along with it. However, it does play with some interesting ideas of like how to become immortal, what makes a person a god, sort of thing like that. Lo and behold, a person can't be a god, and stuff like that. But just like with Lost Souls, the central character, because it's a team effort, but the central character, mostly being Silkworm, has a cathartic ending, just like with Lost Souls. He reconnects with his daughter because of the events in God King, and I feel like that cathartic ending does help round out the events a lot. These aren't like criticisms that I personally have, but a lot of people criticized this book and its writer, again, either Richard C. Meyer or your boy. I'll probably just call him your boy. A lot of people criticize your boy for killing off these characters in the second book. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that criticism. Maybe he killed them off because he didn't think they were as popular as they were. Maybe he always had a plan to help continue the storyline. I don't know. I can't really say. But I will say that because of the events that are occurring in this, the stakes that are at play, it does at least make sense that a lot of big name characters do actually end up dying. Not all of them, but there are a good few that end up getting killed off in the name of good. And I think it does work here in the story. But the villain also has some very interesting storytelling. Again, his backstory is actually in the Lost Souls book. So again, you can make the argument that that continuity is kind of hard to follow because it's in a previous book, and you need that to really enjoy God King. But his backstory, why he's doing what he's doing, everything that he went through, definitely makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if you necessarily feel bad for him per se, but his motivations make sense, right? It's kind of like a lot of people really gravitated towards Thanos in Infinity War because his motivations made sense, and he wasn't just like this sort of clear cut villain. It's a little different here, where you don't really feel bad for him, but you also kind of get it. I might have talked about this in one of my previous reviews about how like you can understand a character even if you don't necessarily agree with their actions. And so that's kind of what's going on with God King in this one. I'm trying to think. There's a couple other extra stories in here too. Zaxi makes a return. So it was the inclusion of the character Zaxi and her return that made me wonder if your boy ever planned on actually leaving his characters killed off, because he killed off Zaxi in Lost Souls, but then in this he brought her back in a way that makes a lot of sense for the universe too. And so I don't know if he killed off several of the characters in God King with the intent of being done with them. Maybe he had every intention of bringing them back, but he just needed to figure out how. And we'll discuss that when we get to Jawbreakers 4, Jawbreakers Forever. But so you have the Zaxi respawn, which is where she comes back. And that was interesting how she was brought back and getting back in touch with the Jawbreakers. And then another really good standout is the Devil Dog origin. Devil Dog is one of the other characters in the Jawbreakers, and him developing as a character, where he came from. Devil Dog, for those of you who don't know, that's a name for the Marines. Whenever, I believe it was World War One, when Germans were fighting the Marines, Germans were calling them Devil Dogs. And your boy took that name and applied it to a character, and it fits really, really well. But that Devil Dog origin really, really stands out, so a really, really cool story there. But yeah, so if I had to say, I would probably say Lost Souls is a little bit more complete, and there's a little bit of better catharsis to it. Also, it's a little less serious, and so there can be a bit more enjoyment in it. God King, there's a lot of seriousness with, God King taking over New York City and becoming a god, all of that sort of thing. So there's a little bit more seriousness with God King. And I do think that just with a name like Jawbreakers and how it's sort of this, not reinterpretation, but it makes you think of G.I. Joe and that sort of thing. I do feel like that your boy works a lot better in the less serious stuff. That being said, we'll see as the stories go on for Jawbreakers that he does get better with writing more serious moments. Also, this is like his second book, God King. And so overall, it was definitely an enjoyment the second time around. Things made a lot more sense. Just like with Lost Souls, I reread that and I was like, okay, story makes a lot more sense here. Kind of have to recalibrate my thinking in terms of reading comics and whatnot. You do have to make some leaps here and there, but it's still a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And just like with last time, because this is an indie book, hard to recommend, more so because I don't know where you would actually get it. So main thing is you can check out eBay and maybe some other online sites of people trying to sell stuff, or there's always, if you follow him on YouTube or whatever, you might be able to see like when his newest campaign is going to launch, and he might have some of his old Jawbreakers books as like add-ons or something. That's the closest thing I can think of. But yeah, I probably recommend Lost Souls over God King, but also that book has the sort of the events that lead up to God King, and so they really do kind of go hand in hand in that way. But overall, still fun, solid read, cathartic ending, particularly for Silkworm. And I really am looking forward to rereading Jawbreakers Grand Bazaar. And so be sure to stay tuned to my channel for that next time. As always, I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost.